Okay, I got a quick lesson for you on pentatonic scales. I'm going to show you how you should be practicing these to get better at them as a beginner that's first learning these scales. These would be the basic ways that you need to be practicing these to really make improvements. So the first thing you want to do, we're just going to look at one pattern of pentatonic. Now, ultimately, you should learn all 5 patterns that are the 2-note per string patterns for the pentatonic scale. But we're just going to start out with the one basic pattern that everybody seems to start with, because I'm going to show you these variations on how to practice this pattern, and then you can apply that to the other patterns. So we're going to do this in A minor, or it could be considered C major. And this is the pattern that everybody learns to start out. Now I'm starting on the 5th fret, then I'm going to the 8th fret, then the 5th to the 7th, 5th to the 7th, 5th to the 7th, and then 5th to the 8th, and then 5th to the 8th fret again. And the fingering is 1 4 1 3 1 3 1 3 1 4 1 4. Avoid using your 3rd finger to do all of this. Start learning how to use your 4th finger. That's extremely important. Okay, so now as a minor pentatonic, that's the minor root. So if I was going to practice this as minor pentatonic, I would start and end on that root, and I would do that like this. And by the way, I would down, up, pick that. So you want to get used to alternate picking. And if you're uncertain if you're alternate picking, because sometimes it is hard to tell as you're first learning it and you're playing it, you might think you're down, up, picking it, and then later you come to find out that you haven't been strict down up on the picking. If you're uncertain, a good way to check yourself is to videotape yourself playing through the pattern, and then you can go back and really look and pay attention to what's going on with your right hand. But down up is strict down up. No 2 downs in a row, no 2 ups in a row. So I'm going to go through this with strict alternate picking, and this is how it would go. So that's minor pentatonic. Now, if I want to play that pattern as a major pentatonic, what I'm going to do is start on the major root. That's this note. But the mistake a lot of people make is they would play and then they would end there without going back and getting that note that's lower than the root. So you still want to play this note as part of the pattern. You just want to be sure that you start and end on the root note. So I'll go all the way up to the high note of the pattern and then come all the way back down to the root and then dip below the root note to get that note and then come back to the root to end on it. And so that's going to go like this. And once again, it's strict alternate picking. Okay, so now the next thing you can work on is grouping this into sets of 2 strings. So we're going to be dealing with all of the neighboring strings and doing that as a repeating ascending riff. So I would take my first set of 2 strings, which would be strings 6 and 5, and that would go like this. Now this is a good opportunity to really practice that alternate picking, because you're just playing 4 notes over and over, and you can see I'm going down, up for those 4 notes. So when I go to my next group of 2 strings, it'll be strings 5 and 4. I'm being certain that I stay with the notes of the actual scale. And you can repeat that however many times you want. You can just repeat it 5 or 6 times, or you could just play on it for 5 minutes straight if you want to. Next group, strings 4 and 3. Next group, 3 and 2 are the string numbers. I'm making sure to play within the scale, using the correct fingers, staying with the down-up picking. Next group, strings 2 and 1. Now, what I would do is descend those same string groups. Now I'm on to strings 2 and 3. As you get better, you can go faster. So those are the ascending and the descending string groups. Now the next thing I would do is I would practice this as ascending with descending, and that would go like this. Staying with the alternate picking. I'm going up and then coming back down and just looping it, playing it over and over. The next group is strings 5 and 4. This will really help you to learn the fingers and the picking and get real comfortable with it. Then I'll do some isolation work on strings 4 and 3. Play at the speed you're comfortable. You can go much slower. Go as slow as you need to go. Next group would be strings 3 and 2. Then we would have strings 2 and 1. Then you've gone through all of the groups as ascending with descending. So as you're getting, if you need to take a week or a couple of weeks and just work on that and not add in the next thing I'm going to show you, that's fine. Just make, it's better to be focused and to really gain some ground on one thing before you move on to the next thing. But once you're ready, then the next thing you're going to do is start sequencing this same pattern. So we're working out of the same exact scale pattern that I showed you in the beginning. So a good sequence would be to do what I call a skipping sequence. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the first note of the scale, and I'm not going to play the second note. I'm going to skip to the third note in the scale. So I'm skipping over this note and going to that note. Then I'm going back to the note I skipped, and from there I'm going to skip a note, which is going to put me here. And then I'm going back to the note I skipped that time and skipping a note. So the pattern continues. You're playing the lowest note in the pattern, you're skipping up, you're dropping back to what you skipped, you skip up again, and you just continue that pattern. And I'll do that for you really slowly through the ascending, and then the descending will just be the reverse of that. So here we go with the ascending. So what you want to notice there is that I'm having to roll my finger a lot, because if I transition from string 6 to the same fret of string 5, I don't want to pick up and do this, because if I pick that up, it's going to chop the notes up, and so then the effect I get will be this. So that's a mistake. You don't want to do that, and it's a really bad habit that I see people get into. Another bad habit is when you see people that actually bar the notes. Because that's bad in the opposite sort of direction. Now instead of having it be real choppy, the notes are overlapping each other, and you're not getting that isolation of note to note. And so what you really want is you want one note to ring until the very instant the next note starts, and then that note would ring until the next note starts, so that you get this sort of melodic flow with the scale or with the sequence. So the way to do that is to actually roll the fingers so that when I go to here, it releases the pressure on this note right at the instant I get the next note. Now here it won't matter because it's two different fingers just by the nature of that particular scale pattern. But here I'll be back to having to roll that finger, and then here I'll have to roll the third finger. So that rolling technique is really important to get good at. So, pay attention to what you're doing there. And then with the right hand, once again, I'm alternate picking all the way through. So I'll go through that ascending one more time for you. Now the descending is the opposite. So I got to go the other direction. So when I roll I have to almost start with the finger flat, like it's already rolled, and then I pop up to the fingertip right there. And so the rolling of the fingers, or the rolling of, say the fourth finger or the first finger, there'll be places where you're rolling the third finger. All of that rolling is going to move in the opposite direction. It's got to start flat and then pop up to the fingertip. So here's the descending. So that's the skipping sequence. Practice the ascending and the descending with the finger rolling, with the alternate picking. Pay attention to all those little details because those are really important. Now the next sequence I would do would be a sequence I call fours, because what you're doing is you're playing groups of 4 notes. So you're starting on the first note and you're ascending the scale through the first 4 notes. And then you go back to note number 2 in the scale, and from there you ascend 4 notes. And then you go back to the third note of the scale, and from there you ascend 4 notes. So you're always kind of skipping back 2 notes. So as I end that 4 notes here, I'm skipping backwards, not to this note, but to this note, and then starting up the scale again, and skip back, start up again. And you're just continuing those sets of 4 until you get your last set of 4, which will be this. And so I'll go through that really slow for you. Notice there'll be finger rolling in there. Now I messed up on the alternate picking there because I was got a little distracted and didn't pay attention to my right hand. So always pay attention that you stay in the alternate picking pattern. I'm going to play it again, this time a little faster, and this time I'll be sure that I stick with the alternate picking. So here we go. And so now the descending is going to be the same idea, but we're just going in reverse. So I'm going descending groups of 4 notes. So I'm starting on the high note, descending 4 notes, then going to the next note and descending. When I say the next note, they say if this is the highest note in the scale, then I'm going to the second highest note in the scale to start the next group of 4. And then it'll be starting on the third highest note in the pattern to start that following group of 4. So that's going to go like this. Notice the finger rolling. There, see? And then here. And then here. And then here I'm rolling. So you want to pay attention to that when you're practicing this. Okay, so at a quicker speed. Okay, so that's 4s. Now the other thing I would work on, the final sequence I would work on, there'll be plenty more sequences, but I'd say the final one for just really getting this pattern under your fingers in the early phases, or the early stage of doing this, would be to do 3s. And it's kind of like it sounds. We just did 4s, so 3s are going to be sets of 3 notes. So I'm going to start on the lowest note, and I'm going to play up 3. Then I'm going to go to the second note in the scale, and I'm going to play up 3. Now, it just so happens that the second note is the second note that I played in that group of 3, see? So I'm back to there. Same thing. I'm just going back a note to start each new group. up through 3 notes, and then just go back 1 note in the scale and play up 3. Sorry, let me do that again. I think you see the pattern. Let me go through it kind of slow for you. I'm doing strict alternate picking, but because it is sets of 3, the first group of 3 notes will go down, up, down. The next group of 3 will go up, down, up. So it keeps flip-flopping like that. And then the descending would be the opposite. I'm just going to descend each group of 3. Go up 1 note and descend, up 1 note and descend. Again, that is, let me try that again. Okay, so, once again, that was all alternate picking. Now, those are triplets. I tend to feel those as triplets, so da 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 da, 3 notes to the beat. It's good to do triplet stuff as alternate picking like I did, but because it's an odd number of notes, it flips each time, so it's down, up, down against the first beat, and then the second beat is up, down, up. So it's also good to practice triplets as pure down, up, down, which means that you'll start each new beat with another down, even though you're ending with a down. So down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. And so the same thing with the left hand, but just changing the right hand to get that other variation on picking, which I call triplet picking. I don't know if that's the proper name for it, but that's what I've always called it. And it's down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. So I hope all of that makes sense, and I hope it helps you out a lot. But that's what I would do when first learning these pentatonic patterns, because if you just play them straight up and down, you're not really going to know them all that well. But if you start doing these different things that I showed you, the 2-string groups, the sequences, playing them straight up and down, doing all of it, then you really start to understand that pattern more inside and out, and just really knowing it in a much more thorough way. So hope that helps, and I'll see you at the next lesson.